Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group, located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about weaponized and weaponization individuals all taking place across our government. Jim Jordan is going to be unleashed. He got the green light. We had a lot of talk earlier this week about a new subcommittee now that the Republicans are in charge of the House of Representatives, a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee that's going to be led by Jim Jordan, the gentleman that you see here on the screen. And it's going to be focused on figuring out why the government, the federal government, via the intelligence agencies and all sorts of other entities, have been weaponized against the American people. So we're going to listen to all of the debate that surrounded what ultimately ended up passing. You can see right here, 220 to 211, a resolution HR 12, and it is a very, very interesting bill that we've already taken a look at. We'll refresh our memory about what it does after we go through the debate, because there was a bunch of it. And what's cool about this is apparently it's going to be a church-style committee that they're going to lead church-style investigations, which we're looking forward to. But if you're not familiar with what that is, we're going to learn more about that. We'll familiarize ourselves with Frank Church and figure out what happened back in the 1970s when they already went after the intelligence agencies for doing a lot of the same things they're claiming they're doing now, right? Back then it was the NSA and it was telephones. Now it's every other little bit of data that they can possibly gobble up. And so we'll refresh our memory and go through two clips from the actual church committee hearings, because hopefully we'll be getting some of that here soon, courtesy of the new GOP. We'll go through the debate. Clips from McCarthy, clips from Jim Jordan. We've got Thomas Massie in the House. We've got Lauren Boebert we're going to hear from. Scott Perry. All of them are saying we've got to pass this new subcommittee. We'll also check in with the Democrats. Pencil neck watermelon head Schiff is very upset that they're going to create their own version of the January 6th committee. He's like, wait a minute, that's only something we can do here. The Republicans are doing it. Democrats are very agitated about it. Jim Govern, have a clip from him. Hank Johnson is hilarious, and he just went on this tirade, and he's got some good zingers in there, so we'll go through that. Then we'll also familiarize ourselves with a long-lost friend of ours on the show, the waddling Jerry Nadler, who's been waddling around Congress for like 37 years now with something in his pants. We don't know what it is, whether it's a diaper or something else. But we're going to take a look at what he had to say, and then we'll investigate the future for our friends Swalwell and Schiff and Omar, now that they are not under the protection of Nancy Pelosi. What does their future look like in the House of Representatives? So we'll get into all of that. And then we'll once again take a quick look at the bill, just so we can see what Jim Jordan and others are going to be launching off with. So we've got a jam-packed first segment, and that'll be a lot of fun. Then we'll put a nice bow on that one, and we'll change gears. We'll go from the legislative branch over to the executive branch, where we have this fella, Joe Biden, the current president of the United States. He's the guy in charge. He was explaining this very, very problematic document debacle that he found himself in after allegedly being in possession of highly classified materials, the kind that many others have told us are national security risks, the kind that many have said are irresponsible if they're not managed appropriately. We covered this yesterday, but Joe Biden was explaining himself because a lot of people have questions about this. So we'll go through Biden's explanation. He was down in Mexico and he was explaining, he read from a prepared statement that they just said, go out here and read that, Joe, and you'll be good. We're also going to hear from Kevin McCarthy. He sat down with Sean Hannity and there was a conversation about what McCarthy is going to be doing now that this is a beautiful gift that has been gift wrapped, a little bit delayed, Christmas came late, but boy, is it a beautiful one. And so McCarthy had a take on it. We'll learn more about UPenn and the Penn-Biden Center and what it involved. Apparently it involved over $60 million in Chinese funds, and a big portion of that came skidding in there to that nice little charitable organization right after it was set up in Washington, D.C., right after Biden got out of the executive branch as vice president. We've got that. There's a big question, a very familiar statute called 18 U.S. Code 2071. And if you zoom in on that statute, it tells us that if a person is mutilating or concealing national security secrets, that they shall forfeit their office and be disqualified from future office. And this statute was being bandied about when we were talking about confidential classified documents relative to Donald Trump. And we're not hearing the statute bandied about too much anymore. But we're going to take a look at it and ask ourselves, does Joe Biden's irresponsible crimes with his classified documents justify removal from the presidency? And there are some very important, very intelligent legal scholars who say that it does, and they say that there's precedent for it. So we'll check back in with their deleted tweets in a minute. And then we have the White House really trying to explain this, and it was a lot of fun. Now, listen, I know that it's not ideal for us to have to sit here and listen to Karine Jean Pierre. I know how painful it is, but we have to do it today because it's good and it's worth it. Trust me. They are unhappy over there in the press briefing room. The media is taking it to Karine. They're saying, listen, all right, you see here, we've got 5 clips. This guy said, you guys promised to be transparent. You're not being transparent. Why are you lying? This guy said you'd admit your mistakes, but you're not. Why are you lying? This woman asked a question about politics. Okay, Karine, if you're not going to answer anything about the substance of the documents, can you tell us what your political take on this is? No answer from Karine. Then we go over to this woman. She's saying, have you even talked to President Biden about any of this? Like, did you talk to him about this? Because it sounds like you just said you didn't. And she's shocked about it. And then we'll wrap up with Doocey time, baby. It's always good time for Doocey time. And he asks a very important question, shoving it right back in their faces. Always enjoyable for everybody out there. And so we'll get into all of that and more, my friends. And if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that is by heading on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an awesome community over there. We do morning member streams. We do member live streams. We post other stuff. People share stories. We get to know each other, and we care about each other over there, man. At watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They're chatting away. You can also get a lot of the same benefits by becoming a member on YouTube. Also, don't forget the sponsors of the show, of course, forpatriots.com, where you can get survival gear, survival food. Stock up, make sure you're prepared. Use code Robert to get 10% off. You can also go to robertlikesgold.com to protect your savings with gold and silver at Goldco. Go to robertlikesgold.com. And of course, our law firm, the Arizona criminal defense law firm known as the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes. 480-787-0394 online, rrlawaz.com. All right. So let's get right into the meat and potatoes of the day, my friends. Starting with Jim Jordan. A weaponized Jim Jordan. Let's start that over again. That was terrible. Let's do it again. A weaponized Jim Jordan launches into Congress. The new Congress, this one led by Kevin McCarthy, made a lot of promises, and we're going to see if they deliver. One of the biggest ones was H.R. 12, where the Republicans say that they're going to be investigating the weaponization of government. You can see it passed the House. H.R. 12, 220 yays to 211 nays, all the nays coming from the Democratic side, Republicans voting in favor on this thing. And right up top, it tells us this was a subcommittee on oversight of government investigations, right? So all this will be housed under the Judiciary Committee, which is led by Jim Jordan. And so we're going to go through this, right? There was a lot of debate before it passed. A lot of Republicans really want this thing through so they can start their investigations in full. We're going to listen to McCarthy. We've got Jim Jordan. We've got Lauren Boebert. We've got Scott Perry. We've got Thomas Massie, one of my favorite. And they're all opining about why this is one of the most important things that this new Congress is going to be doing. And I think that it is true that this is one of the most important things this new Congress is going to be doing, especially because they are still a little bit hamstrung with a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. So for these next 2 years, we better see some serious investigations and see them come hard and fast. We'll also check in with the Democrats because they're very upset about this. These are some fun clips. They're basically just crying against the wall. They can't really do much of anything, and they realize that they're going to get their own version of a January 6th committee breathing right down their necks, just worse than Joe Biden. And so there's going to be a lot of fun clips there before we take a look at the actual resolution that was passed. So we're going to go into all of this. Now let's start at the top. What is this thing that passed, right? It is the Subcommittee on Oversight of Government Investigations. And I want to just explain, right? We're used to watching a lot of government committees on this channel here, okay? We watch all these bureaucrats sit around on their little high tables, looking down at, like, for example, the big tech platform, right? Jack Dorsey comes in here. Were you censoring Americans, Jack? He says, no, I wasn't. And they go, well, that's good enough for me. I guess we're done here. Why don't we bring in Mark Zuckerberg next? And Mark says, Senator, no, we're not censoring MAGA extremists. Turns out they all are, right? And so it's one of those things. But this one might be a little bit different. We take a look at this fella. His name is Rep. Dan Bishop, and he posted this on Twitter January 10th, right after this passed. He said, it's official. We now have a church-style committee to investigate the weaponization of the federal government. Let's get to work. And so you might be thinking, what the heck is the church-style committee? Where did that come from, right? This is something that happened some time ago, and you may not have even been around. I wasn't when the church committee hearings were in effect. And so let's take a quick look at what they're envisioning, right? What do the Republicans want to do, get out of all of this? They say church style. What the heck does that even mean? Well, it goes back to this fella. His name is Frank Church. He is the person who led this committee. So this is kind of going to be like the Jim Jordan, right? This is kind of what Jim Jordan's doing. Let's see if Jim Jordan is up to the task. The church committee, per Wikipedia, you can see they created a final report, which we'll take a quick look at. Church committee, formerly called the United States Senate Select Committee to study governmental operations with respect to intelligence activities, was created in 1975. And look, it investigated the abuses by the CIA. Oh, gosh, that sounds great. Also, the NSA, the National Security Agency. Also, the FBI. Woo, woo. And also the IRS. Beautiful. It's like Christmas morning. Oh my gosh, it's incredible. So all of these intelligence agencies back then in the 1970s are being investigated by somebody who's very aggressive called Frank Church. He calls this the year of intelligence in 1975, diving into the intelligence abuses, finding out all sorts of major revelations, including Operation MK Ultra, right? This is official documents. MK Ultra, drugging and torturing unwitting U.S. citizens as part of human experimentation and mind control. Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's our intelligence community out there. And this is back in 1975, mind you. Okay, not here in 2022, where they have algorithms jacked into your frontal cortex. COINTELPRO, which involved the surveillance and the infiltration of American political civil rights organizations. Family Jewels, a CIA program to assassinate foreign leaders. Operation Mockingbird, a systematic propaganda campaign with domestic and foreign journalists operating as CIA assets and dozens of U.S. news organizations providing cover for CIA activity. Are there any parallels to what's going on now specifically? I think so. I mean, we literally have the FBI, Elvis Chan, delete this, delete that. Wow. He's very excited working in Silicon Valley, liaisoning with the FBI to the big tech platforms. Same thing. They were even just more open about it. The CIA was probably at least trying to be secretive about it. They were sending emails documenting all of this. Okay, so they're going to be investigating that. That's what this committee is intending to resemble. And this is what they ultimately produced. So you can see here that we got a report, book one. This was the final report of the select committee called the Church Committee, right? It's been dubbed as the Church Committee from Frank Church. This came out back in 1976. So in other words, the intelligence agencies have been, a little bit problematic in this country for quite some time. And Congress has been trying to figure out how to get a handle on them from the very beginning. On January 27th, the Senate established a select committee to study the intelligence activities of the United States. After 15 months of intensive work, I am pleased to submit to the Senate this volume of the final report. The inquiry arises out of allegations of abuse and improper activities by the intelligence agencies of the United States and great public concern that Congress must take action to bring the intelligence agencies under the constitutional framework. Back in 1975, the intelligence agencies were running wild. Do you think that they're running more wild now or less as our government has become even more big and bloated and disgusting and out of control? And there's more technology and there's more Congress people who don't even know how to turn on a computer, let alone like a Facebook post. Okay, we saw that from those hearings. So all of this was taking place for a long time. Now, it was an aggressive, actually, committee. There was some interesting people on the committee. So if you scroll down here, it was fairly balanced. From Wikipedia, they tell us you know some of these people, guys like Barry Goldwater, Walter Mondale, right? Walter Mondale ran for president. Barry Goldwater would be a hard right extremist by today's standards. But they put him on that committee. They put some balance on the committee so that there could be an actual investigation. Unlike what we had out of our loser J6 committee, was just basically a giant facade that produced actually nothing. So this will produce, evidently, if this is a church-style committee, a lot. We're looking forward to seeing what they come up with. But they're going, look at this document, right? 135 pages. We just keep going. 366. Look at this. Oh my goodness. It's out of control. 649 pages. And you have appendices, different statements. And I think this is just book one, right? So there's 6 books here. The CIA's internal controls, it's a full stinking audit of the entire intelligence agencies. Amazing. Can't wait for it. Very excited to see what the Republicans come up with and what that looks like once it gets under full swing. Here's just a quick example. I found a couple clips of what the church committees sounded like if we want to take a little trip back in history.
We have a particular obligation to examine the NSA in light of its tremendous potential for abuse. It has the capacity to monitor the private conversations of American citizens without the use of a bug or attack.
Look at this date up here, 1975. They're complaining about the NSA being able to listen to your conversations. There's no cell phones. There's no Facebook. People aren't on email in 1975. This is just the existing infrastructure before all of this surveillance technology is layered on top of it.
In light of its tremendous potential for abuse, it has the capacity to monitor the private conversations of American citizens without the use of a bug or attack. The interception of international communication signals sent through the air is the job of NSA, and thanks to modern technological developments, it does its job very well. The danger lies in the ability of the NSA to turn its awesome technology against domestic communications.
You're kidding. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't turn their ultra power back on America. Well, kind of turns out that there was nothing really stopping them from doing that. They dragged the head of the NSA in here, and you see in this friendly gif here, you see a little bit of a gulp going on in this guy's throat. We're in big trouble. We're in big trouble right now. Hopefully he doesn't ask us this question coming up. But guess what he did? So this question comes out. This fella, Lieutenant General Lou Allen, brought in front of the church committee, asked questions like, is there anything that stops you people in the intelligence community from doing whatever you want? Is there any law that prohibits you, that reins you in?
With respect to wholly domestic communications, is there any statute that prohibits your interception thereof, or is it merely a matter of your internal executive branch directives?
My understanding, Mr. Schwartz, is that at least the National Security Council Intelligence Directive defines our activities as foreign communications, and that we have adopted a definition for foreign communications consistent with the Communications Act of 1934, and therefore I think that is the...
All right, but you believe you're consistent with the statutes, but there isn't any statute that prohibits your interception of domestic communications?
I believe that's correct.
I believe that's correct. Ooh, right. So the question is there anything that stops you from doing whatever you want? He says, well, I mean, we get our directives from these other things. Okay, those other things. And he says, well, we do things consistent with those directives. That's okay. That's great. And we're glad that you do that. Is there anything that mandates, that prohibits you from doing things differently from those standards? No, there isn't. No, there isn't. I believe that's all that we have.
With the Communications Act of 1934, and therefore I think that is the...
All right, but you believe you're consistent with the statutes, but there isn't any statute that prohibits your interception of domestic communications?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so that's what was happening back there in the 1970s. We're looking forward to seeing something like that again. And so let's see what the Republicans are doing today and now. Kevin McCarthy sat down with Sean Hannity, and he was asked about this. Hey, Kevin, now that you're in charge, what are you going to be doing with your gavel? Investigating the Democrats?
87,000 IRS agents.
We promised to do that.
We promised to do it. We made it in our...
Yeah, that's great that it got passed.
In our commitment to America, which you've talked a lot about, and we'll check it off as they go.
I have my own copy.
Yeah, but you know what else we did next?
What?
We just passed the church style committee that Jim Jordan will run.
Church style.
Looking at the weaponization of government. You know what we just passed right now? A select committee on China. And we got 146 Democrats to vote with us.
China.
Pelosi would never allow this. I had an agreement with her, and she backed away the night before. So you want to bring jobs back from China to America. You want to...
All right, so they go on rambling about whatever else. But the question that I had is about this church-style committee. And the man who's going to be in charge of it is right here next up. Jim Jordan is the person who leads the House Judiciary Committee, and Jim Jordan is now given the green light. Rep. Jim Jordan explains why this new committee to investigate government weaponization of their entities against American citizens is so important.
A ploy. It's not a ploy when the Department of Justice treats parents as terrorists, moms and dads who are simply showing up at a school board meeting to advocate for their son or daughter. A ploy. It's not a ploy when the FBI pays Twitter $3 million, not one, not two, $3 million to censor American citizens. It's not a ploy when the...
And that was underpaying them. They did a lot more work than that. They did, censoring, America and delivering certain political outcomes. That's very valuable. You can't pay for that.
Department of Homeland Security tries to set up a disinformation governance board because we all know that the Department of Homeland Security can tell what's good speech and what is bad speech, what's you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, that was singing Jangy Jankowicz. The something, 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 gonna censor you, I'm atrocious. Listen to my horrible voice, expialidocious. Remember, very strange woman. She was going to be monitoring your speech to make sure that you sang appropriately when it's government singing time.
I tell you what, dozens of whistleblowers who've come talk to Republican staff on the Judiciary Committee don't think this is a ploy. That's why they came to talk to us. They know how serious this is. The former Democrat chair of the Judiciary Committee is in the press today saying we're going to fight this tooth and nail. This is political. But meanwhile, the former Democrat chair of the Intelligence Committee pressured Twitter to censor a journalist.
Adam Schiff, pencil neck.
You've got to be kidding me. This is the most important. This is about the First Amendment, something you guys used to care about. And I actually hope we could get bipartisan agreement on protecting the First Amendment, the 5 rights we enjoy as Americans under the First Amendment. Your right to practice your faith, your right to assemble, right to petition the government, freedom of press, freedom of speech. Every single one's been attacked in the last 2 years.
True.
Government was telling people they couldn't go to church just a few years ago. Your right to assemble, your right to petition the government. The Democrats kept the Capitol closed. You couldn't, as a citizen, couldn't come to your Capitol that you pay for to address your member of Congress, to redress your grievances because Nancy Pelosi wouldn't let you in. Freedom of the press, I just told you what the head of the Intel Committee tried to do to a journalist.
Shameful,
the most
pencil
important
neck.
right we have, though, is your right to talk. Because if you can't talk, you can't practice your faith, you can't share your faith, you can't petition your government, the right to speak is the most important, and that's what they're going after.
It strips you of your humanity. If you don't get to verbalize and share your opinion, share your ideas, participate in anything, if you can't share the product of your mind, that is stripping away your humanity. And they're trying to do that. They're trying to make sure that it's very difficult to think a certain way and talk a certain way and say certain things and do certain activities and join certain causes and participate in certain events and go certain places and buy certain things. They are trying to build little woke prisons for everybody else. And they're using the federal government to do it. Jim Jordan is back in charge, baby. Let's check back in.
And that's why we've had dozens of whistleblowers come talk to us. We want to focus on that because we want it all to stop. We want the double standard to stop. This idea that if you're a pro-life activist, you're going to get your door kicked in, you're going to get arrested and handcuffed in front of your 7 kids and your spouse for simply praying in front of an abortion clinic and telling the guy who was harassing your son to knock it off. You're going to have the FBI raid your home. But the protest that went on at Supreme Court justices' homes in the aftermath of the leak of the Dobbs opinion, no problem there. Americans are sick and tired of it. And what we want, we don't want to go after anyone. We just want it to stop. And we want to respect the First Amendment to the Constitution that the greatest country in the world has. That's what this committee is all about, and that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to do.
Amen. Absolutely right. It is important, and that's all anybody's asking for is just even playing field. Free speech for everybody. Democrats can have it too. Nobody gets silenced. Nobody gets shut up. Everybody gets a seat at the table. But they don't want to play that way for some reason. Very strange, because if their ideas were powerful and they carried weight and they were factually accurate and they could support them, they wouldn't need to shut up their opponents because the facts would just stand on their own 2 feet, but they're not very competent in their arguments or their beliefs or their ideas, which is why they resort to censorship. It's the same pattern that you've seen historically throughout the world. Jim Jordan is on the case. We're very excited about it. Now, other people who have Jordan's flank, Thomas Massie. Now, he's asking a very important question of the Democrats. And, he's looking over there to those in the minority now, which is a very fun thing to watch. Thomas Massie asking the Democrats, why are you guys hiding all of this inquiry? Can't we just see what is going on with the intelligence community? I mean, what's to hide?
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserved. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to my very good friend, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massey.
Thomas Massie.
The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Oklahoma. The very words expressed by those opposed to this committee demonstrate the dire need for this committee. We've gone 4 years without oversight. And to quote Shakespeare, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. Those who argue against transparency may have something to hide. So I listened very closely when I heard the former chairman of the Intelligence Committee give the reason that maybe we shouldn't ask for this information from the intelligence community. He said the intelligence community, after this committee, may be reluctant to share information with Congress, that Congress needs to craft legislation. I would suggest...
Yeah, because the intelligence community operates what appears to many of us as outside observers, outside of really any oversight whatsoever. Definitely not congressional oversight, because we saw how that worked. We've seen this before. When Republicans were in the minority, there were Senate hearings, and they called Christopher Wray from the FBI, the director, into Congress. And they said, hey, Mr. Wray, we've got some questions for you. We are Congress. We do have some authority in this country still. And we are the people who get to dictate certain things that happen. We have oversight, right? You have to answer questions from us. He answered no questions. They took a lunch break. They said, okay, we'll see you after lunch. And he said, I have a plane to catch. I have somewhere to be. Okay, it's on film. He said this to Congress. And he had to go on vacation. He was like flying to his second house in Florida or something like that. It was the most ridiculous thing. He walks up and Chuck Grassie's like, well, I guess you're the FBI. What can I do about this? I'm just a dumb old senator. I guess I'll just sit here. And it's ridiculous. So they don't want any oversight. Why? Because they have total control of these agencies, and they are using them to maximum extent to gain ultimate benefit in all of these political battles. Obviously, they don't want anybody to come in there and take a look at that.
If they are reluctant, they are disqualified from holding these positions. If they have grown so big that they are no longer accountable to the branch of government that created them, that funds them, and it is responsible for their oversight, then they need to be hemmed in.
No more airplanes.
I implore my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to populate this committee with serious Democrats. I know there are some over there. I've worked with them. We've co-sponsored amendments on privacy.
If you say so, Thomas.
Over the past decade. Some of them have passed. Please populate it with serious members. Please, to my colleagues on this side of the aisle, give us the resources we need to do this job. And if I may rebut one thing that's been said on the other side of the aisle about ongoing criminal investigations. He says it's unprecedented that Congress would engage in an investigation that involves an ongoing criminal investigation. What was the January 6th committee?
Idiots.
This is not unprecedented. It's what you've wasted millions of dollars on over the past 2 years.
Yeah, now it's our turn, punks.
I urge adoption of this rule and support for the committee that it will create. Now yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back.
Yeah, it stinks, man. They should have thought about that before they started weaponizing the federal government against all of their opponents. And we said this when they were doing this. We said, okay, the pendulum's going to swing back and forth. I'm going to say that, drag that phrase out of the closet again. Pendulum swings back and forth every time. Now, the big question, of course, is whether this will sort of breach the bubble, because the Democrats still control the media by and large. And it's very difficult for these stories to sort of break out of the shell. So while every day you'll have CNN, MSNBC, you'll have all of the, the other three-letter channels, NBC, ABC, CBS, all of them, right? They all get in lockstep. We've seen the copy and paste journalism videos out there. They just literally, they get one script. All of the news anchors read it every time on the nightly news, and they don't talk about anything. For example, take a look at what happened with Hunter Biden, right? Or take a look at what's happened with the Twitter files. They've done a very nice job, honestly, containing the media, which is why I'm so grateful that you share this show and share our shorts and share the channel and all that stuff, because we're rebuilding informational supply chains to make sure that this story and these stories can penetrate through that bubble. But now that the Republicans can do exactly what the Democrats have done for 2 years, January 6th, oh, Trump, they can do the same thing. And guess what? Now Biden has his own confidential documents to support his crackhead son as well. We've got a whole, smorgasbord of just inquiries that the Democrats are going to be subject to, and they are very unhappy about it. Next up, we've got Lauren Boebert. Lauren Boebert is saying that this is something that the Democrats should be very familiar with because for a long time, Democrats have used the government as a tool for their own ends.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In response to the Blue Anon rhetoric, I rise in favor to H.R. 12 to establish a subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. The authoritarian left has used the full might and authority of the federal government to force its agenda on the American people.
We've been watching it, chronicling
it. Weaponized to pressure private companies to censor conservatives, target parents as domestic tyrants, just simply for caring about their children and their education. Manipulate the American people by declaring Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation, even failing to inform American citizens about classified documents that a former vice president had in his possession,
and
launch an unwarranted investigation into President Trump's presidential campaign. Mr. Speaker, our Constitution is a contract with the American people and our government. That contract is designed to produce maximum freedom and minimum tyranny for this great country. Sadly, the FBI and the DOJ and many other agencies...
I yield the lady an additional 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The lady is recognized for 30 seconds.
She was on a roll, too. They had to cut her off, punks.
Sadly, the FBI and the DOJ and many other agencies are violating this contract and working to make the American people subjects rather than free citizens. This committee is essential, and I encourage the creation and the adoption of this resolution. I yield.
Right on, Lauren Boebert. She's dead right about that. The Democrats have been using this as a tool. We have seen it on open display. It's been dropped in 12 different Twitter files up until this point. Many different emails revealed, all sorts of interfacing with the federal government at multiple different levels. So now that the Democrats are facing the prospect that not necessarily, the Republicans are not even coming in here and they're not saying that we're going to do exactly what you did to us to you, right? They're not saying that. Now there's sort of that implied threat there, but really this is just the investigation phase. We just want to ask questions about this. We want to go and figure out what happened so that it doesn't continue to happen, because as Lauren said, we do have a constitution and it's supposed to establish a baseline that we do not fall below. The government is not supposed to cross those lines and trample on our constitutional rights. They have. That's in evidence, right? Elon released the literal emails from the FBI. So we carry on. Scott Perry is delivering a big fat "I told you so" back over to the Democrats, and they're very unhappy about this. Here's Scott Perry.
People on important committees in this institution lie on national TV over and over and over again. No consequence. So how many more times, I ask the minority, how many more times do we have to say "I told you so" before you will recognize the overwhelming power and the abuse of power by this federal government? And will you ever do anything about it? You know when you want to do something about it? When you think you have the presidency in 2024 and you try and regain this House, then you're going to be all into it, investigating all your enemies. That's not what the federal government's supposed to be for. It's supposed to protect our civil rights so we don't serve it, so that it serves us. Gentlemen.
All right, so that is Scott Perry, and of course, he is also out there in favor of the bill, which of course certainly did pass the House of Representatives. So we're going to take a look at what the Democrats had to say here next. We've got clips from Schiff. He's very upset about this, does not want it passing at all. We've got Hank Johnson. We've got modern day McCarthy language, Jim McGovern, and we're also going to hear from our friend Jerry Nadler, the waddler, who's been waddling around Congress for about 35 years or so. But now, my friends, before we get there, let's talk about our friends over at 4Patriots. 4Patriots.com is where you can go, because we know a food shortage, it could be coming, even here in the United States. Experts have written about this as recently as July. We've got drought, inflation, New economic policies and America's food supply is near its breaking point. Just take a look at eggs. Can you find them anywhere? That's why survival food is more important now than ever. And you can create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits ever. It's not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years super survival food. This stuff is hand-packed right in family-owned facilities in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. The kit's compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack easily. We've got different breakfast, lunches, and dinners, and you can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. All you have to do is add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. 4patriots.com. Use code Robert to get 10% off anything in the store, including this 3-month survival kit. You see it right here. It looks delicious. It's got all sorts of servings. It's outstanding. You can go there. You'll get a famous guarantee from them for an entire year after your order, free shipping on anything that's over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale goes to charities that support our veterans and their families. And you can go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert, start building your stockpile today. And thank you for supporting our friends over there at 4 Patriots. All right. So let's take a look now at what the Democrats had to say in response to this weaponization conversation, because they are very unhappy about this. And we're very familiar with this fella. This is Adam Schiff. Pencil neck watermelon head takes the floor of the House of Representatives to explain why he really doesn't want the Republicans to start investigating his very favorite intelligence agencies.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the Republican Select Subcommittee to investigate deep state conspiracy theories. And if you
Not conspiracies there, Adam. We have your emails.
Had any doubt about what this committee is really about its true focus, my colleague from Montana just confirmed this is all about deep state nonsense. Republicans claim without merit that this subcommittee will investigate the so-called weaponization of the federal government, but what it's really intended to do is to undermine the legitimate investigation of President Trump's incitement of a violent attack on this building, on this Capitol, on this citadel of democracy.
How is investigating your censorship of election jokes any way related to January 6th? How is your censorship of COVID misinformation in any way related to January 6th?
An investigation that implicates some of the very members of this body who want to sit on that committee.
So Adam Schiff is crying big time now because he realizes that his power, all of that gobbled up authority that he got from the January 6th Select Committee, it's like that ring of Thanos or something, whatever that glove was. It's like it just transfers hands. And he does not like the hand of that, the sound of that at all. And he's not alone. There's other people who are very upset about the possibility that the Republicans will be in control. From Massachusetts, Jim McGovern is saying that the Republicans will be able to do whatever they want with this committee. Like they'll be able to target everybody. Like the Democrats haven't done that for the last 2 years.
The power to target anyone and anything he doesn't like. Anything and anyone he deems unconstitutional, illegal, or unethical. And who decides what's unconstitutional, illegal, or unethical? Mr. Jordan does. So why don't we just...
No, it should be Liz Cheney. No, yeah, give it back to Liz Cheney.
Let's be blunt here. Republicans claim to care about law enforcement, but this new committee is about attacking law enforcement.
It is? Why? The Capitol Hill Police? We got questions for them? They don't want to release their reports? They don't want to release the evidence? Right? If a cop doesn't release evidence when you ask for it, does that feel appropriate? Right? Everybody would say, no, that's ridiculous. The cop should release the evidence, right? Clearly somebody did something wrong. Release the evidence. You should release your body cam, right? Most reasonable people agree with that. Even cops. Cops will say, I did everything above board by the book. Here's the evidence. Why is that too much to ask for the Capitol Hill Police? Why is that too much to ask for Congress? From our FBI? Are there national security secrets? Well, they can explain that to us. Well, what about, is that in all 14,000 hours of unreleased video? Or where are these problems?
It's about going after people. It's about destroying people's careers and lives. It's about undermining the Department of Justice, defunding.
They literally wrecked thousands of lives with their J6 inquiry without any regard for the Constitution or due process.
the police and settling scores on behalf of the twice impeached and disgraced former occupant of the Oval Office. The MAGA extremist fringe of the Republican Party will use this committee to push QAnon conspiracy theories and lies from Truth Social. They're going to use it to gin up fake investigations.
Follow me on Truth Social at Robert Gouveia.
Into non-existent scandals. I think we need to just start calling this the Tinfoil Hat Committee. Speaker McCarthy even changed the language at the
Tinfoil Hat Committee. Well, we'll see. A lot of these so-called conspiracy theories that everybody's been complaining about have all been proven to be true. They've all been confirmed, actually. Not all of them, but a large part of them. I don't want to go so bold as to say every single conspiracy theory has been proven true, but a lot of them have. And a lot of the ones, particularly that these whack jobs have made the subject of their wrath. Turns out they're not so good at actually identifying conspiracy theories. Now, Hank Johnson, this is a fun clip. Now, this guy's got a bunch of zingers. He must have like a team of writers or something. They're pretty amazing. Let's listen. This is taking place on the floor of Congress. Hank Johnson is explaining why he does not want this bill, this resolution, creating a new subcommittee to pass.
From Georgia is recognized.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to H.Res. 12.
All right, Hank.
The Insurrection Protection Committee.
The Insurrection Protection Committee. That's a good one.
Which Speaker McCarthy, the 21st century McCarthyism, had to agree to last week in order to gain the...
It's not very friendly, these people.
Speakership. So MAGA extremist Republicans forced...
It's like 3 for 3.
As a consequence of getting their vote.
We're not even in 30 seconds in on this, okay? We got insurrection protection, new era McCarthy, MAGA extremism. It's 30 seconds.
The Speaker to promise to create this select committee. And Donald Trump had his hands in it.
Ooh.
Donald Trump had his hands in it last week during this circular firing squad.
Wow.
He was calling the shots, and this will benefit him. This Insurrection Protection Committee is set up to insulate the ex-president along with various MAGA Republicans who are still serving here in the House who are under investigation.
Yeah, so they're going after people like Perry, right? Like Scott Perry. They're saying that he is, he got called into an interview, right? I think by the J6 committee. So the J6 committee goes, it implicates a bunch of House members, right? Which causes division within the House. So then the balance of power changes. The Republicans take over the committee. They start doing the same things and they say, well, our committee investigated your committee. And now we're concerned that somebody that we investigated while we were on our committee, who wasn't on our committee, but is also in the House, is going to be running their committee and investigating us. So they're saying, because we investigated you first, you shouldn't be allowed to get on your committee and investigate us. This is Congress.
It's here to protect them from that investigation. It's here to disrupt the flow of justice in this country. This is a dangerous, extreme committee that is put in the hands of someone who, a group of people who even defied congressional subpoenas and refused to come and testify before the January 6th.
Before our fake committee. They weren't cooperating with our fake committee, which, by the way, wasn't even legally constituted. They never bring that up there. But H.R. 503, which was the resolution that was their first committee, was supposed to be 13 members, just like this committee is supposed to be 13 members. 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans. They didn't put any of the Republicans that the Republicans wanted on the committee. So what Pelosi did is just went and picked Kinzinger and Cheney, who aren't even really Republicans, right? They're certainly not in the House anymore. So that tells you a little bit more about their staying power in the Republican Party. They're gone. Nobody even cares about them. They didn't want him on the committee in the first place. So he's going to be blaming and using as justification for keeping a committee, a counter committee not formed as the basis for that is that they didn't respond to his committee. This is so circular, it's hard to even explain. These people are crazy.
Committee. Now they're trying to interfere with Justice Department deliberations on whether or not they should be accused and charged with committing criminal offenses in the lead up to, on January 6th and thereafter. And this is a very dangerous piece of legislation.
Dangerous.
MAGA Republicans
Dangerous for you.
behind it, led by the head election denier in this country, who, by the way, it's a worldwide affair. This is dangerous.
Election denier? Was he talking about Hakeem Jeffries? Because I think that's his person who was in charge.
We must stop it. Vote no on H-Res 12. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from...
All right, so he's done. We've got one more clip from the Democrats. It's our very favorite, Jerry Nadler. We haven't seen him in a long time, but now he's back on this show. Jerry Nadler waddles down to the podium where he delivers a message about the dangers of a new subcommittee that the Republicans control this time, not the Democrats.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this resolution, which appears designed to launch a dangerous and unprecedented attack on our law enforcement agencies.
What?
Last week, Americans across the country watched the Republican Party melt down the moment it encountered its first test. For days, it
wasn't a meltdown. We all thought it was actually a lot of fun, and we're pretty happy with the result because we got some good things that we wouldn't have gotten otherwise, but okay.
Extremist wing of the party held the rest of their caucus hostage as they demanded a steep price for their support. And today, we have the first of their many demands on display, an open-ended investigation into whatever conspiracy theories may be headlining the right-wing echo chamber at the moment, with unchecked authority to undermine ongoing criminal and intelligence investigations.
Okay, so if we create a committee, just like the church committee that we talked about at the start of this segment, to go and actually ask questions of FBI officials, of DOJ officials, of DHS officials, and so on, that's going to undermine their ability to do their job, which up until this recent moment was basically being quarterbacks for the Democrats. So he doesn't want that to happen, obviously.
For example, the Select Committee can use its expansive authorities to protect Donald Trump, those who perpetrated fake elector schemes to overturn the 2020 presidential election, insurrectionists facing trials for their crimes, and other domestic terrorists. It aims to undermine the safeguards of our democracy and to embolden MAGA extremists who would rather see our institutions
That's their
fail
talking point, copy
than
and
to see
pasted.
Democrats and President Biden succeed. Make no mistake, the Destroy Democracy Subcommittee will enable...
The Destroy Democracy Subcommittee. They're all trying a bunch of different names on. So that's not as good. Destroy Democracy has a good alliteration, but it's not as good as the Insurrection Protection Committee. That's much better.
The House Republicans to interfere with the free operation of businesses they do not like, to inhibit the fight against domestic terrorism, and to settle political scores on behalf of Donald Trump.
All right,
The
Jerry.
Judiciary Committee has serious work to do. But rather than trying to solve the problems of the American people, this new subcommittee will expend untold time and money undermining our nation's law enforcement agencies, our justice system, and our intelligence community.
How much did your illegal
All
J6
for a
committee
political
cost?
stunt catering to the extremist wing of the Republican Party.
A political stunt.
I oppose this resolution, and I encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I yield back the balance of my time.
But the January 6th Select Committee was perfectly legitimate. Everything was great. We loved it. This one's just a little different because we don't control it. That's from Jerry Nadler, waddling around Congress. Hopefully somebody has changed his diaper so he can walk a little bit more freely. Now, as we wrap up, the big question is, before we get to a quick refresher on what this bill looks like, what is the future of these people who are on their way out? We've got a post from the New York Post that tells us that people like Pencilneck and Omar and others are on their way out. New York Post reports Kevin McCarthy confirms that the House panel is booting Schiff, Swalwell, and Omar. So they're all on their way out. Late on Monday, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy confirmed that he will make good on his pre-midterm pledge to remove 3 high-profile Democrats, Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, Ilhan Omar, from their House committees. McCarthy told the Associated Press that he would move to strip the trio of their assignments, following through on a vow of payback for Democrats ousting Gosar, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others from their panel during the last Congress. McCarthy vowed a year ago that he'd remove the 3 Democrats if they won, and they did. And so Stinky Swalwell and others are going to be off those committees, and the Republicans will now be in charge. And so let's see who may be a part of those committees, because this is the actual bill that was published. And we went through this in a little bit more detail previously, but now that it's passed, let's just take a look at the powers section. So remember, they established this committee. The composition mirrors very much what we saw in the other January 6th Select Committee. 13 members, 5 of whom shall be appointed in consultation with the minority leader, right? So this means 5 Democrats should be on this thing. 8 Republicans, 5 Democrats. Now, what ended up happening with the J6 committee is that they just really crossed that out. They put 2 Republicans on there. And so we ultimately had, there wasn't even 10. I think there was a total of 9 of them. I think it was 7 and 2. So this matched their resolution, and they didn't follow it. So we'll see if the Republicans follow it. And if the Republicans don't want to follow it, like if they only want to put 2 people on there and whoever they want, pick the most conservative Democrats that they want. The people who are going to say Joe Biden should be impeached, right? Go pick some red state, blue conservative or blue, conservative Democrat, put them on the committees. They would be totally within their power to do that. And the courts, I don't think could say anything about it because they brought challenges in courts and the courts just said, well, we defer. We've got separation of powers. The court said we can't cross that line, go into the House of Representatives and tell them how to conduct their internal affairs, right? Just like the courts wouldn't want the legislative branch, want Congress coming in there and telling them how to deliberate and how to manage their clerks and how to manage their offices. So the court said, well, we're not going to go in there. If they pass a House resolution and they, form their own committee, that's their own prerogative. We don't care. So the Republicans can literally do the same thing. Pass this resolution, say we control the House, put 2 loser, Democrats on there who are probably great Democrats, put them on there and make it just whatever type of committee they want. And they can just beat it to death over the next 2 years. Everything. Each member shall be treated as a member of the Committee on the Judiciary. They're going to investigate all sorts of stuff. The expansion of the executive branch, how they work, whether they're doing anything illegal, unethical in the executive branch, how they collect information about U.S. citizens, the laws that support the collection of information about citizens, any other civil liberty issues, and so on. The authority comes from the House rules, all detailed there for you. The committee is going to cease to exist 30 days after filing the final report. That's the end of it. And so you can see, very broad. And the Republicans are going to be in charge of all of it. And we're going to be very excited about what they produce for us now that it is passed. And of course, we will continue to cover this. Thank you for subscribing and sharing this show with your friends and family, inviting them to come and join us when we go live. We're rebuilding the informational supply chains here, and we'll continue to cover the great work of Jim Jordan on this very fun new Weaponization of the Federal Government Committee in Congress. Thank you for subscribing and following along, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, my friends. Now, we are kind of changing gears. Now, we're not changing gears. We're going over to the Biden documents now because the Biden documents are closely related. One of the things that the Republicans are going to be investigating, presumably, is the corruption of the executive branch. And who leads the executive branch? Joe Biden. So we're going to get into this. And we've got some serious Karine Jean Pierre on this segment. So I apologize in advance. We've got a lot of her. The Biden confidential documents debacle continues, this time with Joe Biden explaining himself. We're going to see if that stands because we know that all of Donald Trump's excuses didn't carry any water. We'll see if Joe Biden's does. We're going to check in with McCarthy. He said that now that he's in control of the House of Representatives, this will be a focus. We'll learn more about UPenn and Penn Biden. And we'll talk about this very interesting statute, which is in the law. It's about removal of the president. If he's in violation of 18 U.S. Code 2071, there was a very, very important, very smart man who's very, very competent and very effective in elections who said that this statute might be applicable for the removal of the president. Okay, he's a legal scholar, right? We're going to go listen to him in a minute. But 18 U.S. Code 2071, removal from office. We'll come back to that one. And then we'll see what the White House has to say about Biden's possession of confidential documents, because we know that when Trump did this, it was almost the end of America, the end of the world. So what does it mean for Joe? We've got a lot to get to. Let's start up at the top. We know that Joe Biden, he has confidential classified documents too. And after he said it was so irresponsible of Trump, it was negligent, criminal for other former presidents to do this, he had to walk to the podium and explain himself. This is Joe Biden saying, "I'm sorry, America," without saying, "I'm sorry."
First, people know I take classified documents and classified information seriously. When my lawyers were clearing out my office at the University of Pennsylvania, they
Why
set up
were
an
they
office
there?
for me, secure office in the Capitol. The 4 years after being vice president, I was a professor at Penn. They found some documents in a box in a locked cabinet, or at least a closet.
Lock cabinet.
And as soon as
the
they
closet.
did, they realized there were several classified documents in that box. And they did what they should have done. They immediately called the archives, turned them over to the archives, and I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office.
Wow.
But I don't know what's in the documents. My lawyers have not suggested I ask what documents they were.
Of course, because then you'd have to explain it.
They've turned over the boxes to the archives, and we're cooperating fully with the review, and which I hope will be finished soon, and there'll be more detail at that time.
Very surprised, had no idea that this was even a thing. I mean, my goodness. His lawyers say, "We don't want to even have you explain or ask what the documents contain, because then, gosh, that would be a big problem. You might have to come in here and tell us, right? Explain that to the American people." And Lord knows they don't want to do that. Now, the problem with this, of course, is that there are some additional stories out there, that there are new documents that have been found. It's not just that one office in Joe Biden's Penn Biden Office Center outside or near in downtown D.C. Here's what NBC News is reporting. They tell us that Biden aides find a second batch of classified documents at a new location. A new location. That's 2 locations now. That's worse than 1. That's worse than Trump's. On Monday, the White House acknowledged a small number of classified documents had been found at an office used by Biden. Now, the story is very sparse on the details. They tell us from Washington, aides to President Joe Biden. Now, this has been published on January 11th, written by Carol Lee Ken Dilanian at 1:38 Mountain Standard Time, updated J11-254. Aides to President Joe Biden have discovered at least one additional batch of classified documents. Oh, man. In a location separate from the Washington office he used after leaving the Obama administration, according to a person familiar with the matter. That doesn't sound good. Since November, after the discovery of documents with classified markings, Biden aides have been searching for any additional classified materials that might be in other locations he used, said the source. Uh-oh. This source spoke on condition of anonymity to provide details about the ongoing inquiry. A whole separate location with separate confidential documents. The White House did not return a request for comment. The Justice Department had no comment either. Now, the initial discovery was reported by CBS News. Still waiting for details on that. Search being described as exhaustive. Senator Josh Hawley demanding the appointment of a special counsel. The White House issued a statement confirming that a small number of classified documents were found. They wrote, "A small number of documents with classified markings that appear to be from the Obama administration were found. Documents were discovered in a locked closet by Biden's attorneys." And we covered a lot of that yesterday. So now that we've got 2 different locations, presumably, NBC News says there's a whole second location. They have an anonymous source, and we don't know the details of that, but it's enough for Carol and Ken to publish this puppy. Doesn't look good. Second batch, 2 locations. It has to be worse than 1 location. That's the standard narrative. So now that all of that is coming to fruition and Joe Biden is in even more hot water than he was yesterday, let's turn our attention over to what Kevin McCarthy has to say about this, because he was asked about this during an interview with Sean Hannity. Hey, Kev, now that you're in charge of the House, are you going to be investigating Joe Biden? And what do you think about these confidential documents that he allegedly has that he stole?
Their words, but the hypocrisy. Think about this. They've gotten away with so much for so long. This was discovered before the last election.
Yeah.
Just like the laptop. They think they can lie to the American public. They think they can control the media.
They have.
Control
They've been doing
companies
it for
to
a long
shut
time now.
down
It
if
works.
one media company writes about it. They think they're above the law. Why weren't they raided? Why didn't they
Great
have
question.
the FBI coming in? Why didn't he in 60 Minutes say, well, I understand that because I bet I have the same problem?
And did they even know? Did the National Archives know these documents were missing? I mean, they have to have an inventory of their library books, right? If they're going to go say that Trump had overdue library books, they had to sort of know that those were there were documents there. So he checked them out, right? The FBI was monitoring him. They're saying he's moving boxes around. What's going on with those? We're moving boxes. He said he gave us the documents back, but we still think he has documents. And they had secret spies, the mole at Mar-a-Lago, roaming around, reporting back to the FBI, infiltrating everything. Why was that level of scrutiny applied to Trump but not to Joe? Why did the National Archives know that they were missing something from Trump but not from Joe? Is it because he stole them? Because maybe they were checked out without checking them out? You know what I mean? They didn't sign the little book thing, and they took the documents. That's why they're all panicked about it. And that's why they're turning them back in.
Did Barack Obama have some of this when he was writing his book? Does Hillary Clinton have some? And you know what? All those
Hillary Clinton did. She had a whole email server full of classified stuff.
people have been in
Not documents, digital.
government for years. President Trump just ran for president. Do you think he knew everything? You think he went and moved his own boxes? And you know what? They were
this is
locked
kind of-
away. Biden's were not. And how many years after did he have them? The FBI actually.
All right, so Kevin McCarthy's, all right. Yeah. Differences between the documents, I get it. The better argument is Trump is president, he's vice president. But the problem, right, the standard was that everybody got a little bit of leeway. He's making a proximity argument, which I think is less useful, honestly. But whatever. All right, so questions about University of Penn. Now, something very interesting came up. As people dig into this little, charitable organization or this think tank or whatever it is, Biden nominates University of Penn president for an ambassadorship. Oh, very convenient, isn't it? Following a China disclosure complaint. Now, there's this organization called the National Legal and Policy Center. They filed a complaint against the university, UPenn, 2020, alleging it failed to disclose millions of dollars in donations from China. The story comes over from Fox News. You see, here's Joe Biden. It says that President Biden has nominated the China-linked president of the University of Pennsylvania, this woman seen here, her name is Dr. Amy Gutmann, to be the next ambassador to Germany. Isn't that convenient? Ambassadorships. Now, Amy Gutmann is the distinguished professor of political science and was praised as one of the world's 50 greatest leaders. She's been president since 2004. But between 2013 and last year, very interestingly, the university allegedly received tens of millions of dollars in undisclosed donations from China, according to this organization called the National Legal and Policy Center. It is a conservative-leaning public ethics group. The dollar totals that were being funneled over there dramatically increased after the school opened its Biden Center for Diplomacy and Global Engagement. That big empty office building. The NLPC filed a complaint against UPenn last year. They alleged $22 million in so-called anonymous donations from the country, from China, for the Biden Center, and $70 million in total from China through the Penn Biden Center. These people, man, 70 million bucks. What is it for? The University of Pennsylvania has stonewalled all inquiries into the identities of the Chinese donors who made $22 million donations. And the Biden Center opened March 2017, about a year before Biden announced his 2020 run. The complaint charges that in 2017, of a total of 7.7 million in donos from China, 500,000 came from anonymous donors. After Biden launched his campaign in 2018, the total jumped to 27 million, with anonymous donors giving now 15.8 million. It's the same shtick that the Clintons did with their Clinton Global Initiative. Remember how many hundreds of millions of dollars Hillary was just siphoning up like a vacuum cleaner until she lost? Then where'd all that money go? Nowhere. It's all slush fund money. And in 2019, Chinese donors gave $26.9 million to the center. 2019, you probably knew he was running for president. $6 million anonymously. Academy is awash in Chinese cash. It's time for administrators to start answering questions about that. Many others are linked over there. And she, of course, is now an ambassador, or was appointed ambassador. Checking over with the National Legal and Policy Center, the organization responsible for some of the investigations. They published a new piece today, which for some reason I can't zoom in on, so I guess we won't read it. But the National Legal Center filed a Freedom of Information Act request today. Some questions that need to be answered, they say. Why was discovery kept secret before the midterm elections? Why would that be, important? Well, because they wanted to manipulate the outcomes. We have, why are private attorneys moving an academic office? Good question. Where were the movers? Why is Biden Center moving when they have a 4 to 5 year lease remaining on the expensive 14,000 square foot prime space with stunning views of the Capitol? That's totally empty, according to the person who did the drive-by yesterday. Why hasn't the Justice Department searched the Biden Center to see if other documents are there? Great questions. All from the National Legal and Policy Center. Asking questions. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it. But now that we know a little bit more about this debacle, we have to ask ourselves, should Joe Biden be removed from the presidency given his theft of confidential documents? Some people say that that is true, that it should be the outcome, given 18 U.S. Code 2071. You see here, highlighted in blue. The law says, shall forfeit his office and be disqualified. This statute was being thrown all over the place 3 or 4 months ago. Everybody was melting down over this on Twitter. All the lefties. Remove him, retweet. Let's take a look at the statute and see if it's still applicable to this one. 18 U.S. Code 2071, concealment, removal, or mutilation generally. A, it says, whoever willfully or unlawfully conceals, like takes confidential classified documents, or attempts to do so, or even removes them, take a look at that, shall be fined under this title. Any map, document, or other thing deposited with any clerk or officer of any court shall be fined. Now, whoever having the custody of those documents unlawfully conceals those documents shall be fined and imprisoned not more than 3 years, and shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. All right? That's what the law says. Now, very broad law, not something that you see enforced regularly, but it is part of what our criminal code contains. This is part of why our criminal code is so disgusting. It's so broad, it can apply to basically anything and anybody. But the law is the law, and boy, oh boy, they were thinking about this for Donald Trump, and they were talking about using this to preclude him from ever running again. It says removal from office. They wanted to manipulate the office of the presidency using this statute. Now, does that apply? I don't know. You might just say, Rob, you're just some weird lawyer from Scottsdale. What the heck do you know? What kind of credentials do you have? Don't take it from me, folks. There's somebody much smarter than I am, of course, and because he's a Democrat. And here's what he says. You know this guy, Mark Elias, founder of the Democracy Docket. He's waging wars against insurrectionists all over Twitter. And this is what he published. He, of course, is the former lawyer at Perkins Coie, which is where Michael Sussman worked, who we covered when he was being indicted and prosecuted. He was found not guilty, but he was prosecuted in Washington, D.C. for colluding with the FBI. The evidence, in my opinion, was as clear as possibly can be on its face, but a D.C. jury acquitted him anyways because it's rigged over there. Mark Elias, the founder of Democracy Docket. You might know him as the person responsible from winning a bunch of election litigation lawsuits and rubbing the Republicans' faces in their own failures. He's very effective, very, very good at what he does, unfortunately for us. So here's what he said. Oh, on Twitter. This one was published back on August 9th. Interesting tweet. It says from Mark Elias, it says, the media is missing the really, really big reason why the raid today of Donald Trump that wasn't conducted on Joe Biden. Mark Elias, The media is missing the really, really big reason why the raid today is a potential blockbuster in American politics. Finger point down below. 18 U.S. Code 2071, concealment, removal, and mutilation. Oh, the statute we just read. And look what Mark has highlighted here for us. Shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. Oh, very curious. So this is the big potential blockbuster, according to Mark Elias. Now, if you were to go over to Mark Elias's Twitter account, you'll notice that this tweet is not there. Very convenient. If you try to find it, here's the screen that you'll get. If you'd like to look it up, here's the link itself. That's the actual URL. And when you click that link, guess what is there now? Oh, very, very convenient down here. Sorry, that tweet has been deleted. You're kidding me. He would delete that? Bummer. That stinks. Fortunately, the Wayback Machine still has it. And they published that on their website. So you can go take a look at it. Here is the actual URL. You see it's here. It's captured. And he adds a caveat there in a subtweet. He says, yes, I recognize the legal challenge that the application of this law to a president would garner. But the idea that a candidate, right? The idea that a candidate would have to litigate this during a campaign is, in my view, a blockbuster in American politics. All right. So even his caveat is extremely consequential for Joe Biden and the president. He says that this, in other words, should absolutely be disclosed and that anybody running for office would have to litigate this. Trump should have to litigate this. He should be prosecuted and litigate this regardless the next time he runs. That same standard should apply. Right, Mark? Why'd you delete your tweet? It's a great point. I mean, if you're going to apply it to Trump and we all agree, okay, I guess that's the new standard. You guys started it. Why wouldn't it also apply back to Joe Biden? And if you don't want to prosecute him, okay, maybe that's not the blockbuster there, Mark, but you still got to litigate it, right? Joe Biden should still have to litigate this. This should all still be on full display for the American people to see so he can defend it. Why he shouldn't be removed from office per your standards. And we know that Mark Elias is like the liberal lawyer Jesus, right? They love this guy like it's crazy. Look how many retweets this got. 3,600 retweets. That's nuts. 24,000 retweets, I'm sorry, is what it got. 3,500 quote retweets. 80,000 likes on that tweet. Democrats were going hyperventilating psycho mode over this. They just couldn't take it. Removal? Stop him from running again? And when this all turned out that Joe Biden did the exact same thing, they started deleting their tweets just like little deniers of reality. That's the legal expert. So I guess I agree with Mark Elias. He should be removed from office in Section 2071. Bye-bye. All right. So now that the White House is recognizing and everybody on the liberal side is trying to paper over this thing. Oh, no, I never said that. Delete all over the internet. Let's take a look at what the White House has to say, because we're going to have to spend a quick minute with Karine Jean Pierre explaining away everything that went down. But before we go into the White House reaction, let's talk about Goldco, our friends over at Goldco. And you can go to robertlikesgold.com. and look at these memes while I read this. If you have an IRA or 401k or a savings account, you know that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt hit a record $30 trillion and inflation's the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They will give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open a qualifying account. That's robertlikesgold.com. Goldco, A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau. They're good friends with the show, and everybody likes gold. So thank you for supporting the sponsors of the show, our friends at Goldco. All right. The White House is reacting and responding to the Biden document catastrophe, the situation that now eliminates all hope that Trump will be prosecuted. We've got a lot of Karine Jean Pierre. We're going to get through it together. It's worth it. Trust me. Here is Karine. First question out of the gate. Karine walks out after the trip to Mexico. Karine, can you tell us about these documents?
A couple specific questions regarding the discovery of apparently documents marked classified in the president's former office. The president acknowledged yesterday that he had been briefed that those documents had been found. When was he briefed that those documents had been found?
So let me just lay this down a little bit because it's just for folks who happen to not be following this. Look, the president addressed this issue yesterday. He addressed it on in Mexico City on a world stage.
We saw
in front
that.
of many of you at a press conference with two of our closest neighbors, as you all know. And he said he takes classified documents and information seriously. He was surprised to learn any records had been found there. He doesn't know what was in them. He said this, just repeating what the president has said.
We heard all
As soon
that.
as his lawyers realized these documents were there, they did the right thing and immediately turned them over to the archives. As he said, his
Again,
team is
we've made this
cooperating.
point. They had no choice but to do that. They keep making this point. He didn't have a claim to them. He didn't have the authority to say, I declassified them, they're mine. That was never the option. So this idea that he just, we did the right thing. You had to do that legally. You had no choice. So stop saying it.
Fully with the review. And we also released a statement from the White House counsel's office, as you know, on Monday, which had information, detailed information about the particular situation. As my colleagues in the council have stated and said to all of you yesterday, that this is an ongoing process under the review of the Department of Justice. So we are going to be limited on what we can say here. But as the president told you, as my colleagues have said to many of you, we are committed to doing the right thing, doing this in the right way, and we will provide further details when it's appropriate.
Yeah, so they're trying to distinguish this from what Trump did. Trump did things the wrong way. He was contentious. He battled them. He exercised his rights. He said, I was the president. I had the power to do this, that, and the other thing. But because he did that, that's the obstruction. That's where they're going to try to separate this out. Trump committed obstruction. Biden did it because Biden played nice. They're going to try to, it's like dividing or subtracting from both sides of the equation. All right, we're going to subtract the possession of national documents from Joe and from Trump. We're going to subtract the shouldn't have taken the documents from Joe and from Trump. Now we're going to also subtract, Biden doesn't have obstruction. That means Trump only has obstruction. And that's what we're going to charge him with because they're looking for anything. They've invested way too much time in this. They've got special counsel. They have the whole J6 committee. They want Trump indicted. It's like their biggest policy position that they have these days.
You mentioned you want to do this the right way. Presumably that means the transparent way. So my question was, when was...
So second question from the reporter is, okay, Karine, you answered nothing. You basically repeated what Joe Biden said. You guys said you were going to be transparent. Can you please confirm that you're going to be doing that for us now?
Further details when it's appropriate.
You mentioned you want to do this the right way. Presumably that means the transparent way. So my question was, when was the president briefed? He said he was briefed. When did that briefing happen?
Again, I'm not going to get into the details. I'm not going to get beyond what the president shared yesterday. He laid out what he knew, when he knew it. He laid out how important it is. He sees it very seriously when it comes to taking classified documents and information. I'm just not going to, I know you all are going to have a lot of questions on this, but at this time, I'm not going to go beyond what the president said yesterday. I'm not going to go beyond what my colleagues from the White House counsel shared with many of you as well on Monday. And so I'm just going to leave it there. Want to be prudent here and make sure that it is that my colleagues really truly handle this issue.
One more stab at this, because again, this is
one more stab, third
a lot
try.
Of importance to people. The president mentioned that handling of classified information is important. These documents were discovered on November 2nd. This didn't become public until my colleagues at CBS News reported this on Monday. That's more than 2 months later. Why was the public not informed while the White House prepared its PR response for 2 months?
Again, this was under review. This is under review by the Department of Justice. I'm not going to go beyond what the president shared yesterday.
Okay, but you could have told us all of that before, right? You could have explained to us specifically that this was under review. Like, you didn't have to wait until this moment to tell us this is all under review. You could have told us this is all under review a long time ago. Why didn't you? They could have continued to do their review You took 2 months to prepare your public relations statement so you could get your bearings straight, and you're doing a terrible job on this right now. You're not giving us any information. You have almost like no plan. Why?
I'm not going to go beyond what my colleagues at the White House Counsel shared with all of you as well. Look, what you received from the White House Counsel on Monday was had complete details, a lot of details to all of you on what occurred, and just not going to get beyond that. It is, again, an ongoing process. We're going to respect the process. As the president said, his team handled it the right way, and we're just
There's
not
no
going
choice
to get ahead of
for
the
that.
process
You don't get kudos for that.
Thanks, Karine. Have you spoken to the president?
All right, so pay attention to this question because we're going to come back to this. This woman right here asks this question about, did you speak to the president? All right, now we're going to go around the room here, so let me just take you around. We're going to hear from her. We're going to hear from Doocey at the very end. This woman, I forget where she's from. I think CNN or something. This gentleman, we're going to hear from him. There's a woman back here in the mask we're going to hear from. We're going to go over here to this dude who has some good questions. We're sort of bouncing around the room. The whole media is upset about this. They're irritated with Karine Jean Pierre. And so we now go over to this question. There's going to be a follow-up to this one from this woman over here on the far right. She asks, have you spoken to Biden about it? There's a follow-up because Karine says, no, I actually haven't really spoken to him about this. And then the follow-up is, what? So let's just put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that in about probably 15 minutes.
These documents and their discovery? I have not spoken. Well, first of all, I have not spoken to the president about any of this specifically.
Okay, put a pin in that, right? Let's listen to the question. She changes her answers. Oh, she's busted. I caught this the first time around, but I didn't go back and listen to it because I thought we were going to do it here. She's busted big time. Listen to this question from this nice lady right here.
Process from here.
Thanks, Karine. Have you spoken to the president about these documents and their discovery?
I have not spoken. Well, first of all, I have not spoken to the president about any of this specifically because he's laid out what he knows. He has said he doesn't know what is in them, so there's no way for me to talk about the documents if he has said he doesn't know what's in them. And we're just going to allow the process to continue.
So for the sake of the American public who...
Okay. She didn't say that she hasn't talked to him about the documents. She said, I haven't spoken to him about any of this, just to be clear.
want these questions asked and answered, would the president characterize what happened here as a mistake? Would this White House characterize this as a mistake?
What I'll say is this is an ongoing process. You heard from the president.
That wasn't me. That was somebody in the press room
yesterday, in front of on a world stage, in front of many of you who were there.
He talked about it
in front of many of your colleagues.
Therefore, he's
innocent.
innocent.
He laid out what he knew. He said that he takes this seriously when it comes to classified documents, when it comes to information that is classified. He was surprised to learn about the records had been there. And again, he believes that
just repeating the same bullet points,
that the lawyers did the right thing, and they immediately turned them over to the archives.
They have to.
Saying that he was surprised to learn about these documents. Is he saying that he did not bring those documents to that office?
I'm just not going to go beyond what the president said.
No answers.
Did bring those documents?
I'm not going to go beyond what the president said.
But you're saying you want to be transparent and do things the right way. We're
yes,
not going to get any more answers.
And his team of lawyers did do that. They did the right thing by turning over the.
Okay, but you're not being transparent, though.
Archives. That's what they did once they realized that they had them. And, that they were there.
Yeah, but okay, but you weren't transparent with us. Like, you didn't tell us about it. You waited until after the midterm elections, and then you dropped all of this stuff after the House rules were already passed. And a lot of people knew about this a long time ago, Karine. So that's great that the lawyers did the right thing, but your White House hasn't done the right thing. I mean, you came in promising us openness and transparency, and you're going to tell us what's going on. You let this go on for 2 months while people like Mark Elias and others, right, were out there on the airwaves, bashing Donald Trump, all these talking points, day in and day out about what a monster he is for mismanaging classified documents. Meanwhile, you knew the whole time that your guy was doing the same thing, and you let all of your little underlings run out there and play that talking point, knowing full well that your guy was guilty of the same crime.
So it's not clear, Karine, how the documents got from the White House to this office.
Steve, I appreciate.
How did the documents get over there, he asks, and then she shuts him up, and this poor fella, he's like, all right, sorry for the question.
They did the right thing by
Watch his
turning
hand.
over
Oh, sorry,
the,
Karine. Don't murder me.
Archives. That's
Watch.
what they did once they realized that they had them and that they were there.
So it's not clear, Karine, how the documents got from the White House to this
I'm-
office?
Steve, I appreciate the question. It's under review. I'm going to let the DOJ.
How'd the documents get there,
do their
Karine?
process. I'm just not going to get ahead of it.
Back on the FAA.
All right, so then he goes over to the FAA, and you can go, of course, check that out. Now we've got more clips because the media is very upset about not having any answers at all, and so we're going to listen to this guy where he admits he's saying, "Hey, White House, you told us when you took office that you were going to admit your mistakes. You have not done that. Why not? Would you admit this is a mistake?"
On the documents case, again, you've laid out that the president's lawyers and the special counsel are dealing
This
with
guy
the
right
legal
here.
side of this. You've now laid out that you have not had a conversation with the president about this.
No conversation.
But this was reported Monday. It happened in November. Are you aware of any conversation in the West Wing among others, people other than the president, about disclosing this once it was discovered?
What I can say is I was asked by your colleague if we talked about the documents themselves.
That's not.
The president said he does not know what was in them, right? But also just
That's not what the question was. The question was about, have you talked to the president, not about the documents. She said, I have not talked to the president about this. Why? Because he already explained it.
wanted to clear that up.
Okay, so she corrects that now, right? She says, I just want to clear that up.
Look, themselves.
Because she realizes I'm in big trouble. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said I didn't talk to him about this because they're all asking me about this, right? She's the press secretary. She can't say that. You didn't talk to the president about the biggest story out there all day? Are you crazy? So she corrects that on this next question.
Once it was discovered.
What I can say is I was asked by your colleague if we talked about the documents themselves.
That's not the question.
The president said he does not know what was in them, right? But also just wanted to clear that up. I understand you guys are going to have a lot of questions on this.
well.
I get that. I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions on process and specifics. And what I can tell you is that I'm not going to go beyond what the president laid out. I'm not going to go beyond what my White House counsel colleagues have stated. I would refer you to them for any other specifics or additional information. I want to be prudent here. I want to make sure that we do this in the appropriate way.
We're going to ask them because that's our job.
I understand, and my job is to answer your questions. So here we go.
You're not
Let's
answering.
go.
Here we go. Let's go. And then not answer any more questions. Karine, you can't do that. Ugh.
Colleagues have stated. I would refer you to them for any other specifics or additional information. I want to be prudent here. I want to make sure that we do this in the appropriate way.
We're going to ask them because that's our job.
I understand, and my job is to answer your questions. So here we go. Let's go.
We asked this is because on like day 2 of this administration, when he swore all of you in, the president said, quote, I'm going to make mistakes. When I make them, I'll acknowledge them, and I'll tell you. And I'll need your help to help me correct them. So you're the one here talking to us about this.
Yeah, Karine, punk. Good for this guy, whoever that is. I don't know what entity he's from, but he's pushing back on her. He's saying, listen, you jerks came in here and you told us on your second day to hold you accountable and that we would need your help. You told us that. That's why we're doing that right now, Karine.
That's why we're asking you. So let's just remember that.
When
he was asked yesterday.
Ed, we don't need to have this. We work very well together. We don't need to have this kind of confrontation. Ask your question, and I will answer them the best that I can.
Part of the reason we're
Okay, so she had to regain control of the room. Did you notice that? So she got taught at press briefing school, probably learned from her bigger sister, Jen Psaki. Don't let them talk back to you. If you let them talk back to you, you're going to lose control of the room. So as soon as he says, so you remember that, right? Watch what Doocey does. It's so funny. Watch Doocey's little smirk. His eyeballs go, whoa. He goes, I wonder what she's going to do. Because he knows that she's losing control of the room because this guy's giving her some serious attitude back. It's great. Good for him.
asking you. So let's just remember that.
When
he was asked yesterday.
We don't need to have this. We work very well together.
Doocey's eyebrow right there. I'm sorry. I got to indulge. Here, watch that eyebrow. Last minute before the frame change.
There it
goes.
We don't need to have this. We work very well together. We don't need to have this kind of confrontation. Ask your question, and I will answer them the best that I can.
Part of the reason we're laying that out is because you're laying out your part of the job.
I
We're
know,
laying out our part of the job.
I know,
which
but
is
I'm
ask
just
the
saying that we
questions.
don't need
know
to
there
have
are people who will
contention.
be
We don't
watching
need to be contentious
when-
with me here.
Answer the
The
questions.
president was asked yesterday, but did not answer this part of the question. Why didn't he or someone in the White House inform the American people when these documents were discovered on November 2nd? Did it have anything to do, because people are asking this part of it.
Yeah.
Did it have anything to do with the fact that the election was just a few days away?
Again,
Yes.
Ed, this is under review by the Department of Justice. It is literally under review right now. As I am talking to you, it is under review. So I'm not going to get beyond the process. I'm not going to get beyond what the president said. Look, the White House counsel, my colleagues in the White House counsel, laid out a very detailed information about
You had like
this
4 bullet
particular
points.
issue on Monday. You all have that. I'm just not going to get beyond that. The Department of Justice is independent, as you know. They're doing a review, and I want to be prudent here. And it would be more appropriate. It would be more appropriate for my colleagues in the White House counsel's office to address.
Doesn't want to answer it.
Into the briefing room, and we hope they can come soon to discuss this. But there's another thing.
Yeah, bring him over, he says. Okay, bring the White House counsel over here then, because we've got questions for them too.
There was nothing stopping the President of the United States from disclosing the discovery of these classified documents in his former office before it was under Justice Department review.
Right. Or while it was.
What I can tell you right now is what the president share with you what the president said to all of you, right? Which is he was surprised by this. He definitely, truly respects the process here.
Apparently not.
And also, when it comes to classified, he takes classified documents very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm going to leave you to the information that the president provided to all of you, and also just yesterday, in front of many of you or your colleagues, and also what my White House counsel colleagues shared on Monday.
The leaders of the Senate Intelligence Committee today, like they did after the raid at Mar-a-Lago,
right,
have asked that the Director of National Intelligence conduct a national security assessment of this apparent discovery of classified information.
Everybody was melting down. Trump has nuclear codes. Trump's selling his materials to old Pooty Poo. He's meeting with the Saudis. They've got golf clubs together, and so on and so forth. And they came out and they said, we're going to do a total overhaul. We're going to audit everything. We're going to see exactly what the implications are from Trump's debacle, because we don't know how far this could reach. We don't know how many of America's interests have been truly implicated here. And so we've got to do a full audit with the Office of the Defense of National Intelligence. So, do you need to do that now? Because it seems like you do. Very similar, Karine. So don't just kick this can down the road like we did the right thing, therefore nobody needs to investigate it. All the same rules apply. Do you know that the Republicans are now asking for the same thing?
Has the president asked for one? Or are you aware of the ODNI?
I would refer you to Department of Justice here. This is
No, because it's ours.
I would refer you to Department of Justice on this particular issue that's being reviewed currently.
On whether the Office of Director of National Intelligence is conducting a national security
when it comes to the
You want me to go to the DOJ to get answers about the ODNI? Do you know how government works?
review that we are currently speaking of right now, of these classified documents, I would refer to Department of Justice. Go ahead.
Apart from those classified documents, the president did say that he was unaware of records being brought to that specific office. So aside from those, has he asked his lawyers, has he looked into whether any other documents have been taken to any other office that he has, whether in Wilmington or Rehoboth? Has there been any kind of audit that's been done of where there may be others that he doesn't know about?
Okay, we know that there are other documents out there. We talked about that at the top of this segment. So let's listen to Karine.
I'm just not going to speak to this. I'm going to let the process continue. It's an ongoing process, and so I'm just not going to speak to this from here. It is more prudent and more appropriate for my colleagues at the White House Counsel.
On another note, you were
doesn't want to answer about that, but we already know that there are other documents that were picked up. NBC News reported that previously, and we had that story here. Biden aides find a second batch of classified documents at a new location. So Karine presumably knew this was coming out. She's been briefed on the matter, although she said she hadn't spoken to the president about it, but then clarified that a little bit. But anyways, aides have discovered at least one additional batch at other locations separate from the Washington office he used after he left Obama. So more documents out there. Nobody knows what the total damage is. And the White House won't even confirm whether or not they're going to be doing a total damage assessment like they demanded happen after Trump's raid. No raid, no ODNI inquiry, no demands for prosecution. The White House just continues to deny or decline to talk about it. Let's carry on. We have a couple of additional clips. This woman in the press briefing room asks Karine about the politics, okay? DOJ is investigating Biden and his confidential theft of documents. But what about the politics? Surely you can speak about that, Karine, right? You can't talk about the ongoing investigation, but this is your wheelhouse, right? You can tell us about the politics?
You spoke of the legal aspect of it. There is also a political aspect to this as well. There are some Republicans who are grabbing onto this cloud of documents that have been reported. What do you believe will happen? How will the work for the American public go forth with Republicans already talking about investigations? Already, Marjorie Taylor has been screaming impeachment for the longest, and now with this, she's saying impeachment. How does the work of the American public move forward as now documents are reported that were in an office connected to Joe Biden?
Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record.
You are.
But the
You are.
more prudent thing to do is to make sure that my colleagues are dealing with this. My colleagues in the White House counsel office, and I want to respect the process. This is an ongoing process, as you all know, that is being reviewed by the Department of Justice, and I'm just not going to speak beyond that. I know you're talking about the politics.
Legal, but I'm talking about the politics.
I understand. I'm just not going. There is an ongoing process that is being reviewed by the Department of Justice. I'm just not going to speak beyond that.
Lastly, the Atlanta trip. Can you talk about what this moment?
All right, so then they talk about the holiday coming up tomorrow, and so no answers on that one. Not even talking about the politics. Now, as I mentioned, we said put a pin in that comment, right? Karine said, we haven't talked about this. We haven't spoken about it. Her statement was that the president explained his position. That's all that we needed. We get clarification on this one because the media is not believing her. Karine, did you say you didn't talk to Biden about this, one of the most important issues of the day?
Thank you so much. President Biden campaigned on a promise to stay true to the spirit of transparency. Why then, how is it possible that the White House did not reveal the presence of these documents prior to the election when they were found?
Again, the president spoke to this personally yesterday. You heard him at the press conference.
He didn't answer that question.
He laid out what he knew, and he talked about how important and how he sees this as a serious matter when it comes to classified documents and information. He talked about about how he was surprised to learn about the records that had been found there, and he laid out his process and his thoughts. I'm just not going to go beyond that.
Same
Again,
bullet
we
points.
released information that was very transparent, meaning the information that you all got received from the White House counsel's office. And I know you all are going to have a lot of questions. I get that.
It's an
and I
important
understand that,
topic,
but
Karine.
I'm not going to go beyond the process that's currently happening at the DOJ.
Does it undercut the president's promise of transparency that these documents
Yes.
were not revealed for several months after
Yes,
the White
it
House
does.
discovered them?
Yes.
But look,
Come on, Karine.
so when his lawyers realized that these documents were there, they turned them over to the archives. They did the right thing. They turned them over.
Yeah, 2
All I can
months
say is
well,
what the
immediately, but
president
we
said
didn't learn
yesterday,
about
I
it.
would refer to his comments. But they did the right thing by, once they learned of them, they turned it over. They turned it over to the archives. And
We're getting to
this is-
Doocey soon.
I understand the question, but there's
Doocey's
an
coming up.
ongoing process. It's being reviewed by the Department of Justice. Just when it is appropriate for us to say more, we will. Otherwise, I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
I do want to be very clear about something you
Okay,
said,
real
make sure I
quick.
understand you. Following up on one of my colleagues who asked you, you have not spoken to the president about this? Weren't you traveling with him
Well,
when
no,
he made this public statement?
the way I heard the question is, have you talked to the president about the documents?
That
And
wasn't the
I'm-
question.
He
We
doesn't
listened
know
to
what's
it
in the
3
documents.
times.
That's the way I heard the question, so that's the way I
Well,
was
that
answering
wasn't the question.
Talk to him about the revelation of these documents.
Yes, we talked
Okay.
about the CBS story, we talked about the revelation of the documents, obviously. But about the documents itself, what's in them, that is something that the president doesn't even know, and I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay, has he conveyed to you when he was briefed, and if not, can you go back and get that answer?
I've not talked to the president about that. What I can tell you is I know you all have a lot of questions. There is an ongoing process here, and so I'm just going to let the process finish.
Quick
Move forward.
follow, I want to let you respond to former Vice President Mike Pence, who talked about what he and some other Republicans are calling a double standard with the Department of Justice.
Double standard.
Mr. Pence said the kind of double standard that we see being practiced by the Biden administration in the wake of this incident in the Justice Department, I think is exactly what undermines public confidence in our justice system.
Again, as soon as his lawyers realized these documents were there, they did the right thing and they turned over the documents to the archivists. That's what they did as soon as they realized the documents were there.
That would have been really good if you would have also come out that day and told us, hey, we found something, big problem, we're embarrassed about this, it's a mistake. We are going to notify you. Yeah, it sucks. It's November 3rd, but we know the elections are just a couple days away, but we promised we'd be honest. We promised we would be transparent. We have been screaming a bloody murder for the last, 4-6 months because of Trump and his documents. We do feel kind of stupid now, and this is the truth. They didn't do that at all. They say their lawyers did the right thing, and everything else is just really irrelevant. As long as their lawyers turned it over to the National Archives, everything else is irrelevant.
And his team is cooperating fully with the review. Again, there's a review happening by the DOJ, and we're just going to let the process move forward.
Great.
Great.
I'm going to go around.
I'll come back. Thanks, Karine. Just to follow up on Franco's question, given the position you're holding right now, there are no assurances you can provide at this point that there are no other classified documents out there in any other office in Oklahoma.
Again, this is an ongoing process, so I'm going to let the process continue. It is being reviewed by the Department of Justice, and I'm just going to leave it there.
The question was, are there any assurances that you can give us that there are no other documents out there? We already know there are other documents out there. NBC News has said they've got a source who's confirming that to them. So if they can't give us certainty about the safety of these confidential documents, that sounds like deeply irresponsible. It sounds like they are being reckless and careless and criminal with classified documents. So there are just, and apparently, aberrant documents are just floating all over the place. And she can't give us any reassurances, and the ODNI is not doing an audit according to them. Like, they haven't just pulled that trigger, right? They're not doing anything to button this up. They were demanding the walls go up around Trump, that the entire intelligence operation, right, sort of restructure itself to mitigate any of the potential damaging effects. But this is just like, no, we can't talk about any of the mitigation efforts. The other guy asked about an audit. Have you done an audit? Do you know where else Joe Biden went? Like, is he just forgetting documents around? He forgets a lot of things. He just like leaving briefcases around like his son, forgetting laptops at certain repair centers. What the hell's going on with his family? Any assurances, Karine?
And you referenced the council statement that there are limitations to what you all can say at this point in time. Do those limitations, just for clarity's sake, extend to literally everything beyond what the special counsel said on Monday night and what the president said last night?
There's the White House counsel. My colleagues are here to answer questions on this particular issue. And I am just going to let them speak to this. They put out on Monday a very informative, transparent statement about this particular issue. So I'm going to let them speak to this any further. But as for me, as for here, I'm just not going to go beyond what's happening currently.
And just one last one. The president alluded to last night, you kind of had as well, the idea of once this is kind of all over or wrapped up, there will be more information, there will be more details. Do you have a plan for that? How should we expect that additional information to come? In terms of, will you detail everything you know once this is done? How does that all work?
So as the president told all of you yesterday, we are committed to doing the right thing here, and we'll provide further details at appropriate time, and that's all I can share.
That's all we've got. So you're not going to get a report. You're not going to get any official closure from us. Just keep hounding us about this until we get more details that we can pass along to you. But we've got one final clip from the media, and you can see, boy, oh boy, they have just been really going after her, one right after the other. This guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. The whole press conference was basically about it. And she didn't want to talk to Doocey until she finally circled back, like her big sister taught her, to Doocey. But before we can get into Doocey time, we have to refresh our recollection with this clip from Joe Biden.
And you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago. What did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen. How anyone could be that irresponsible.
Wow.
And I thought, what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods? By that I mean names of people who helped or et cetera. And it's just totally irresponsible.
And you don't know.
Totally irresponsible. Totally irresponsible. I mean, who would have classified documents that aren't accounted for? It's Doocey time. Finally, Karine goes over to Peter. She knows he's going to ask about these confidential documents. She's been avoiding it this whole press briefing, but finally, it's his turn.
And then on these documents, how could anyone be that irresponsible?
Oh, quote from the president.
Isn't that what this president says about mishandling classified documents?
The president spoke to this personally. He spoke to this personally, and he believes that classified documents and information should be taken seriously. He takes them seriously, and he was surprised to learn by any records had been. I disagree. Here's what happened. Once
Then why
his.
is there a Justice Department?
Well, let me explain to you the process. Here's what happened when his lawyers found out that the documents were there. They immediately turned them over to the archives.
But they were
But
there
they
in the first
immediately
place. I understand
turned them
that
over to the
you say
archives.
they did the right thing
I'm not
by
gonna
making it
I'm not
out.
gonna go into specifics, but what I'm reiterating to you is what you heard from the president yourself, Peter, which is how he saw the process and how he respects and truly
He cares.
respects and takes this very seriously.
Very seriously.
And when he knew, and how surprised he was by it, and the actions
Wow, documents.
the right actions that the lawyers took. Again, this is under investigation, is under review by the Department of Justice, and we're going to let that process continue.
How can President Biden be trusted moving
Great
forward
question,
with
Peter.
America's secrets?
Because his lawyers, his team did the right thing.
But he had a closet with
He,
classified
his lawyers
information in
did
it
the
that
right.
they found. How did it get there?
Again,
Did the
he
lawyers
did.
do
He
the
was
right thing?
surprised that the records were there. He spoke to this
But they were
personally.
there.
He was surprised that
He
that
didn't
the
know they were
records
there.
And
So how can we
when
trust
his
him?
lawyers found out and his team found out that they were there, they turned it over to the archives, and now it's being
Just got
reviewed
random
by the
documents.
Department of
He doesn't even know
And
where.
just one more. Why didn't President Biden want to see what's really going on at the border?
All right, so
did
it's a
see
border
exactly
question.
what's going on at the.
He didn't go down to the border. They talk about the border. But Doocey, why is he so irresponsible? How could he be trusted with these documents? I mean, he's literally ripping quotes from their administration, but it's because he did it that it's all okay. It's all above board. Everything's cool because this only applies to Trump. That's what it's always been about. It's never been about the law. It's never been about the documents. It's never been about J6. It's never been about COVID. It's never been about war. It's only about gobbling up power, money, authority, and eviscerating political opponents off the board. And the media, to their credit today, they did go after Karine. Hopefully they keep it up and we get some more answers on this. But we will continue to cover it. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for sharing one of our shorts, vertical videos, or one of our segments with friends or family so they can come on over here, enjoy our live streams, which we do every day. And we will look forward to seeing you on the next one. That, my friends, is it for the show on the day. You can see we covered some seriously serious ground today. The White House trying to explain away Joe Biden's confidential document debacle. McCarthy saying they're going after them. We think removal might be appropriate again. I mean, Mark Elias, he thought it was so powerful that he had to delete the tweet. That's how powerful this tweet was. He had to get rid of it because it was so useful against Trump. He didn't want that power to be applied towards his own president. We also had an update on the weaponization of government. So if you missed that segment, we talked all about the weaponization of government with Jim Jordan, and he is now leading a committee that's going to be focused on in finding out why the government is now weaponized. A lot of great clips from Jordan, Boebert, Perry. We had some fun with Schiff, Wadler, Nadler, and the Hank Johnson, the Insurrection Protection Committee. A lot of fun stuff today. So, of course, now it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about all of this in the YouTube chat, in the Rumble chat. Of course, we're going to jump over to Locals for a short after party after we're done over here. But let's check in and see if we had any super chats. I saw a couple very generous super chats come in. We're always very appreciative of those. We're doing a refresh over here. Let's see what came in. We had a couple come in at the start of the show. Random person 5185 with the dono, but no chat. Thank you on that one, random person. Appreciate you on that. Brian Reinhardt says knowledge and contents and intent, or knowledge of the contents and intent, are not elements of the crime. Right. And this is the same talking point that the Democrats were using daily. Trump doesn't need to know what's in them. It's mere possession. And he says this, Brian Reinhardt, mere possession is enough to convict. Ignorance is no excuse. That's what they said for Trump. So standards, baby. We love standards. If they're going to apply it to Trump, Republicans should apply it to them. If the Democrats are going to create fake, illegally constituted committees, the Republicans should do it too. Raymond Loera is here. Says, do lawyers give free services such as cleaning out a client's office? No, generally not. No. If not, should there be documents stating the purpose, intent, or parameters of why personal lawyers need to be inside of previously occupied offices? It's a great question there, Raymond. And yeah, you would presume that there would be some sort of contractual agreement. So, our office, the R&R Law Group, when we do legal work with people, we sign a fee agreement and we define what the scope of the work is. We say, this is what's included, this is what's not included. We're going to be representing you on this case, but not on that case, and so on and so forth. And, we bill by flat fees, but if you're an hourly lawyer, you're typically billing for time, right? And we went through a lot of these billing records with the Ghislaine Maxwell case, and we saw what her lawyers were doing. And sometimes lawyers might go and they might do some of this type of stuff, go pick up those documents and go, whatever. Rummaging through somebody's office and assembling the documents, that's very interesting. That's interesting. I like to see what they're billing and what that looks like. I'd like to, see what those lawyers saw. And if you're, a federal prosecutor, like somebody like Jack Smith, who's prosecuting Donald Trump, and you got somebody who is looking the same towards the Biden people, they'd be asking those lawyers a lot of questions. Like, did you throw anything away? Did the cleaning crew come? Did you put, they keep saying it's like 10 documents. Is that because the other 300 documents got left in the shred bin that the cleaning crew came and picked up? Or were those other documents absconded by the Chinese who donated upwards of $70 million, $60 million over to this organization? Who knows, right? There's all sorts of what could possibly happen ideas. And a lot of questions about that. But no, as a general rule, no, lawyers are not movers. So I don't really know what they would be doing there. But yeah, they would have it marked in their notes, right? Their case notes. Bill 4 hours for packing Joe Biden's sock drawer or whatever. They should be billing for it, unless they have some sort of a general retainer that's just a big, overarching retainer that they don't delineate. Now, again, it's the Joe Biden family. Who knows what they're doing there and how many of those documents were shredded before they turned over the other documents. Molly Dolly's in the house. Thank you, Molly Dolly. And thank you, Raymond, for that last question. Molly Dolly just brought this one in the house. Says, I wouldn't want to suggest that the Biden team would illegally shred or hide the documents found off campus. That said, why do you think they turned them back over? Were they hoping to hide it from the media? It's a good question, honestly. And, Molly, it kind of caught me by surprise. Like, this is one of those stories that you sort of expect them to paper over, to just sort of cover up. I'm actually honestly shocked that it hit the light of day. I think that probably, I think that at some point somebody's probably going to find out that these documents are missing, right? Like, the Republicans are now back in control of the House of Representatives. So there's a concept in law, we talked about this yesterday on the show, called drawing the sting, right? Like, if you know you're going to get hit, you want to do the release of the hit information. You want to be the one to drop it. In other words, the Biden people would rather disclose this than let the Republicans find this through an investigation. Because then you, in addition to the actual crime, which would be the possession of the confidential documents, you'd layer on top of that the cover-up, right? Which is oftentimes worse than the crime. So you'd rather have them disclose it. It's like you let the bad information out first. It's a concept called drawing the sting. You put the bad facts out in your trial, get rid of them so that the other side doesn't bring them up. Same thing I think is happening here. They know the Republicans are coming in. They squeaked this one through on the date so that they could push it forward past the midterms. Boom, right after the Republicans get sworn in, the story breaks. So we all hear about it. Weird timing. How did that happen? Oh yeah, probably because it was all intentional. That's exactly right. And so who knows, like you said, who knows what those lawyers were doing and what's going, they're going, all right, this one's going back to the archives. This one's going right in the shredder. Okay, this one has Joe Biden. He's a charitable guy who donates to save little children. This one is Hunter Biden's receipt for his crack house. All right, so that one goes in the shredder. This one goes back over to the National Archives. Right, that would be legal work, right? Okay, this is a legal document. This is privileged, not privileged, or whatever. Like document review, right? That could be legal work. So maybe that's what they were doing. And we don't know how many documents are in there. All going back over to the National Archives. Hopefully we learn a lot more, but thank you for that one as well, Molly Dolly. I appreciate you there. And I think that rounds us out for the super chats. Thank you, everybody, for sending those in and supporting the work that we do here on this program. Very grateful for all of you. And I think that is about where we will leave it right now. We're going to jump back over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for a little bit of an after party and to go through some additional questions and comments over there. But we'll leave it there for now. Before we jump out, I want to thank everybody who was a part of the program, everybody at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you click the YouTube member, but you can join as a YouTube member. We do morning member streams, live streams. We do additional content here and there. And so come check us out, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Also, thank you to our sponsors who are supporting the show. We have a new one coming next week, which I'm excited about. You may have heard of them in other channels. I'm actually consuming their product right now, and I feel vibrant. I feel vigorous, and I can't wait to share it with you. But the sponsors today were 4patriots.com. Don't forget to use code Robert if you go over there to get your survival food and your survival gear. Also, our friends over at Goldco, where you can protect your savings with gold and silver at robertlikesgold.com. And of course, our law firm, the R&R Law Group. We're located in Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. Any type of criminal charge, we can help. We offer free case evaluations online at rrlawaz.com. Also, thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. Vientikis Prime is in the house, and there he is. V, thank you for all of the extra work over there, and I appreciate your help. K Bean is in the house. We've got Just Cause Lean playing hooky. Ronnie Cole Zulu, and Geomancy is, of course, on YouTube, and you can go subscribe to his channel if you'd like to support his work. But thank you to the mods who mod down the fort and keep things nice and orderly. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you'd like to join us, come on over. We'll be there for a little bit. Otherwise, my friends, I appreciate you being here today. Thanks for all the insightful comments, all the fun in the chat. Vientikis says we had a Rumble rant that I missed. I thought I checked those, but I missed them. Before we get out of here, it's hard for me to see the Rumble rants now because here this is. MNL Hayes says the press corps is finally asking some tough questions. It took criminality to get them there, but it is great. I know. That's why I wanted to sort of drag us through all that Karine Jean Pierre. Like, I think it was worth it to go through it all. Like, I know it was a lot of Karine, but it was well worth it. It was good. It was, they were asking some good questions. I was like, dang, who are these people? Where'd this media come from? Pretty amazing. But all right, thank you for that one, MNL Hayes. It's fun. Maybe the media will have a turning. Maybe they're going to throw Biden overboard because they feel like idiots. They should feel pretty, bad about themselves. If they were the ones who were screaming, hyperventilating that Trump committed the most heinous crime in modern history, and Joe Biden just did the same thing, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and just say, okay, maybe I should calm down about this stuff. Maybe I shouldn't just demand the absolute evisceration of my political enemies without thinking about the long-term consequences. Do you think that's going to go through their minds? I certainly don't. But that is it, my friends, for us on the day. We're going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our after party. I hope you join us. But if you don't, I hope I do see you here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.